We try first to tell you very briefly what Sentimento Nuevo was. It was a one-year project that took place in Bologna at the MAXXX, that is the modern and contemporary art museum of the town. And it was about the new Italian art critic and the art writing, the state and the role of new Italian art critic. And I think around 50 or 60 people took part to the project, among critics, curators, collectors, gallery director, etc. It is maybe interesting to tell you how we met, because we didn't know each other before this project in Via Farini. Benoit said that Via Farini is one of the most important independent space in Italy, and it is, and oldest also. Yeah. And we met in Via Farini because we both took part to this project about curatorial practice. It was a series of interviews with 10 young Italian curators. And at that time, we both were living in Bologna, and so we liked each other, no? And we decided to start to do something together. And because of the place where we used to meet every day, our working place, were some bars in the town, we decided to do a project in some bars.
Also because it's a very typical place of Bologna,
yeah.
It's a very important place for the cultural exchange, let's say, in Bologna, because it's as probably you know, it's a big university city, and the large part of the people that living in the city center in Bologna are students, and they are spending a lot of their time into these places.
Yeah. And mainly I don't know how to say, the aim of this project, which name is, because we are still doing it every year, is a Festa Mobile that is taken from the book written by Ernest Hemingway, as you probably know, is to use the potential of the bar as we always say, as an anti-institution, or as a, how can I say, as an informal institution, or as a place that belonged to the art history of 20th century, to force people to speak more directly, more frankly, yeah. Even also in a polemical way sometimes. And this aspect of a more direct and polemical dialogue is very important also for Sentimento Nuevo. Mm-hmm. Of course, we were not in a bar, but we were in a museum. But we were in the lecture hall of a museum. But Flavio Favelli, who is a very big career Italian artist, he took part also to the last Venice Biennale, and somehow he's one of the artists that we both like. We wrote a number of texts in different moments for him. We both wrote texts for him. Flavio Favelli helped us to reinvent the space of the lecture hall and made an environment or an installation in which all the discussions, all the round tables took place. Okay, well, which were the most important topics we discussed during Sentimento Nuevo? The first one is that we are all curators, but we are also critics, and we also write a lot. We write text, we write a critical essay, we write even only press release. And the difficulty, even if we write, is to relate ourselves to the tradition of Italian criticism that is very strong during the 20th century. It's quite easy, I mean, to draw a line in the history of Italian criticism until, I would say, the 70s, the 80s. You know, there are some figures like Carla Lonzi, Germano Celant, or Tommaso Trini, or Paolo Fossati, that are still really important. After that, after the 70s or the 80s, is more difficult to draw this line. And which place we have in this history, which place we have in this tradition, this one of the things we discuss a lot. And also, this is a question pointed in a fantastic book written by James Elkins in 2002. We write a lot. The art criticism is healthy, but who really read what we write? And how important is what we write? And how we really help artists' career with our writing. And also, in other topics, I would call it the ambiguity or neutrality of what we write. A question that we pointed to quite often was how able we are to say something strong, to take positions. And this is also a problem related to the Italian art of the present day, to the fragility of Italian art of the present day. Who is able to say something strong or to describe the Italian art of the last 10, 15 years? In this way, the fragility of Italian art, what we call fragility of Italian art, is well connected to our fragility. Last aspect that was really important is Bologna. Bologna is, in the middle of Italy, is between Milan, it's between Rome, Venice, Florence, and we thought that Bologna was the right place for a discussion about critics. Not only for the geographical reason, but also because Bologna has always been like a meeting point, a connecting point between the North culture and the South culture. For example, in 1955, in the 50s, 51, 55, I don't remember now.
You mean about Officina?
Yeah, Officina.
Yeah, in 50s, right after the Second World War, a few years later, let's say.
It was founded in Bologna, this magazine, which name was Officina. It was founded by Roberto Versi and Paolo Pasolini, that you probably know, which aim was to be a connection point between the culture or intellectuals who lives in the north and who lives in the south, in Rome, in Milan. And for us, Officina was an important thing that happened in Bologna many years ago. Lastly, I would like to read some of the questions, because we pointed a number of questions to...
Also we can say maybe that we decided to focus our project on the Italian situation because of a question of limits. You know, we needed to be a bit focused. We cannot talk about everything. So giving some geographical aspect to the one that we know better, it was a good way for us to use Italy as a tool to investigate what does it mean to be an art critic today, even internationally speaking. You know, taking the situation of Italy, where there are a lot of problems and lacks, as maybe a better way to see about the weakness that there are also in the practice of writing today into art. You know, in the age of curators, let's say, we cannot avoid that probably we are in a situation of crisis, let's say, of art criticism, and in a situation where the curators are, let's say, under the spotlight because it's a fresh work, it's a new work, it's something that just started let's say more or less 40 years ago, and probably one of the first figure that started to having some kind of strong consciousness about what does it mean being a curator has been Arat Zeman, and that's also very interesting for us to talk about this aspect. But now we are in a situation where not all our colleagues, but more or less all of them are curators that are also writing. And this can be somehow a problem, you know, these are two different works, even if in the large percentage of cases they are connected in the same body of people, you know. And we were also investigate if there were some topics or some attitude into the critical work that could have been interesting to inflate, to put it also into curatorial practice, let's say. So this is, I think, something also important to say. So also the question that were like kind of backbones of our project here are written for an Italian context, but we think that can be seen as
an interesting thing we can try to understand today. We were speaking 10 minutes ago about how these questions could be perfect for Italian context or for an international context, or you know. So you want me to read the question?
I will try.
We'll try to.
We would like to make something really dialogical, so really informal also in this situation. So feel free if you don't understand something, or if you would like to point something to interrupt us, and let's try to chat as much as possible among others, you know. Okay.
I try. The questions are very simple. Anyway, precise. Which is the state and role of the new Italian art critic, who are the reference figures in Italian art critic today. How art writing is changed in the curatorial age. Yeah. And is it possible to find a new scale of values, a new vocabulary, new narrative models for art criticism? Is it possible that in Italy, I would say we write a lot, but we don't read each other? Are we still able to describe the Italian art scene in strong critical thinking, and which are the magazines and the main mass media a place for a critical debate in Italy today? That's all.
No? Okay. I think I can tell you a few words about the book that we published at the end of this project. We decided, you know, because it was a project made by ephemeral events like lectures or roundtable or just informal conversation like the one that we are doing today, we decided to do not make some kind of abstract of what we said in that situation, but to make like a kind of new chapter of that one. So we decided to make a selection of critical texts that were written in the last more or less 10 years about Italy or Italian artists or topics related to Italy. So it's something really connected with in this case it's something really connected with Italy. And maybe
we call it anthology.
Yeah, we call it as an anthology, or it's a reader, let's say, more or less. I think I can spend a few words about the Mambo, maybe. For us it was important to do this project at the Mambo, that is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Bologna, and it was important for us that, because maybe it's one of the few institutions that followed the country, let's say Italy, after the Second World War, because in Italy we do not have any kind of big tradition in public institution like you have, for example, here in Switzerland. And the Mambo is the only one that from 50s till now has had some kind of of continuity, of strong continuity with a very important program also. In the 70s, probably has been one of the most important institution, even internationally speaking. They did, for example, the week of performance, that it was one of the first public project about performance all around the world. And for example, is the situation where Marina Abramovic did some of the first performance, and some also of the best performance that she did. And she replied a lot of this performance in his last solo show in New York. Another important thing that maybe we could say is that the text that we choose for this book were not only written by art critics, proper art critics, but a large part of this text were written by artists. And this is something that we saw it was really important in Italy, but not only, is that probably some of the best texts written in Italy in the last 10 years were written by artists. And this is also something, it's a sign of, even in this case, of a situation where maybe if there is a lack, someone have to feel it, to take the responsibility to do something if someone else is not doing for them. And maybe this is something that we can also talk a bit later with Italo, that is an artist. There is a text written by him into the book. But I would like first to start with Nico, starting from the point that Benoit said before, that to understand Italy, you have to understand the Italian art system. Let's say you have to imagine a situation where not everything, but the large part of the art system is held only by private effort. So the large part of the show that we make or that we see in Italy are made into private gallery, even if we have institution. But the institution are continuously on-off, let's say, beside the Mambo in Bologna. There are always crises into our museum. They can be really rich or really fruitful for a few years, and maybe with the next change into the political situation, they can stop or close. Like even now in Rome, there are a lot of problems about it, because one of the MAXXX, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's on the verge to be closed because the new politician there doesn't. They are not interested on that. And so you have to imagine a situation where there are just private effort on that. And let's say till 2000, I don't know, let's say 2000, the beginning of 2003, 2004, it was a really, really poor situation. In that years, we felt, even with talking with Davide, that something changed. There is the things that Benoit said before. Probably also helped by internet, that it started to be really important, also with the low cost. Our generation started to travel a lot to see how people were doing outside, and there was a kind of flow of a new energy going on. So many people of our generation started to do their thing by themselves, a kind of do-it-yourself punk attitude, I usually say. And then many different artist run space or informal space all around Italy, really all around Italy, from the Alps till Sicily, even in really remote places, started to make a program more or less good, more or less informal or formal, with money or with no money, but many different artist-run spaces started all around the country with a very good level of things. The average level of things, I think also Benoit can say that it was very good. And for example, the one of Nico Codalunga, I think is one of the first, if not the first one. I think it was the first one. When you started in 2004. In 2005. And in parallel with that, another good sign, it was that many other people of our generation started also to new publishing houses. Now there are a lot of publishing houses in Italy, making magazines that became quite important even abroad, like Moose magazine or Kaleidoscope or Cura magazine. I don't know if I'm... And that was very important for our project as well, because there were all these magazines, and also a person like Ansu Recovery said that probably the Italian publishing landscape is probably the most dynamic in the world, and actually there were many of them, and so we were talking also a lot about this new magazine in Italy. But I think it's also, you know, the project in the bar that we did, it was also a way to react on that. It was a way to reflect about how can we do something with no money, you know? Even if we were at the beginning more or less of the, let's say, economical crisis in 2009, something like this, it was also a vision of a possible future where there were no money to keep something open in Italy, and you have to find a place where you don't have to pay for electricity or for people that keep the place open. And so one of the first place that it comes in mind is to do something into bars. And it was also an interesting place to investigate, because it has even if it's an hidden story, but has a strong story. You know, it's a place that followed let's say the modernity. You know, all the avant-gardes, more or less. There's a big anecdotal story about things that happen in bar. But I think that we can start talking with the experience of Nico, that can tell us a bit about his experience with this space, Codalunga, that it's in Vittorio Veneto, that it's an interesting town close to Venice, but it's quite difficult to reach that place.
Hello everyone. So yeah, for sure Vittorio Veneto is a place which is hard to reach, and the reason why I decided to relocate in Vittorio Veneto after having lived in New York for a while was basically, well, I felt the need to sort of question my own work as an artist, and I thought maybe it made sense to go back to my origins and to my roots in a way, and which could have been just Italy. But in Italy at the moment, in my opinion, there's not a city that gives as much as it asks in terms of energy, in terms of also financially. So, you know, like in Vittorio Veneto, I could have had, for example, a huge studio for the same amount of money. I would have get maybe like a one-room studio in the center of Milan, let's say. But that said, when I moved back there, I was bored, very bored and lonely. There was nothing going on there that I find very interesting. So I thought, why, as I did in the past, you know, like Antonio used the idea of do it yourself, which is this kind of philosophy or attitude that is very linked to the punk and hardcore scene, and that's basically where I come from. So it was in a way very natural to me to say maybe I could be the one making sure that there is something that I find interesting in this town. And there Codalunga came in. It was basically a section of my own studio where I decided to invite other people. And it's funny because just yesterday night we were talking around the table, and we were discussing about the importance of a possible manifesto. And I forgot, like I was the first one yesterday to say, oh, fuck the idea of the manifesto. But in the end, when I did Codalunga, there was a manifesto. And I just recollect the memories now that Antonio was introducing the space, and the manifesto was at just 3 points. The point was that in order to decide the people that I had to invite, there were these 3 rules. The first one is that these people had to be my friends. The second one was that I had to like what they were doing, and what they were doing had to be done in a professional way. I think this manifesto lasted for maybe 2 or 3 exhibitions or / events, and then I forgot, as I said, about this manifesto. But here we are, more or less 10 years later, to talk about a space that became more and more important for me, and my research. Not only through Codalunga I managed to create the basis and the possibility to produce a work of mine or communicate a work of mine, but also there was this exchange that somehow is natural but is also forced in the relationship to the people that are invited, and that because, as Antonio said and I also said, it's Vittorio Veneto, it's out of the context, and the context could be anyone. You pick one, and Vittorio Veneto is out of the context, unless you want to talk about Prosecco wine, for example. But you know, if you talk about art, there's no art going on there. If you talk about the scene, the music scene, basically the music scene is the one that grew up out of Codalunga. And so the people that come there have nothing to do rather than spending time with each other. And these along the year became a platform really like to discuss ideas, scenarios, possibilities, and to me, in a way, it's quite unique because it doesn't happen so often. Then you go to an opening, and in the end, you have the time and the possibility to discuss with someone. You know, it's even though I hate to admit it, I'm kind of bored by the artwork, you know, and it's not so pleasant to go to openings and so on. So Codalunga, in a way, has a different approach to that. But as I said, it's not even an approach. It's something that comes out of just that situation in which we are. What can I say? One thing, you know, like that. Codalunga was very helpful. For example, when I said to you before that Codalunga in a way helped me in order to organize or to produce a project of mine. There is one example that can maybe clarify what I'm talking about. In 2009, I was invited by the Kunsthaus of Graz to develop a work for an exhibition called Rock Sheets or Paper, and it was an exhibition about the relationship basically between rock music, rock culture, and art. And I had this idea of casting basically a band that, and this band was meant from the very beginning to be, let's say, the totally opposite of what a casted band is right now. What the industry of entertainment is trying to do is basically to create something that has no possibility to go wrong. It has to be successful, it has to be financially productive, you know, and there are basically certain rules to follow, and in order to create that. I tried to do the opposite rules, and I created this band which was meant just to stay within the context of Vittorio Veneto. We're talking about a town with 30,000 people living, so pretty small, and with, beside Codalunga, no other venue to play music. But I wanted to make a tour, and the tour was of 16 shows in 15 days. Well, I make it bigger every time I say it. It's like 15 shows in 14 days, actually. But and we toured, you know, like basically, as I said, that Codalunga was the only place where normally band would play, but I had to find a way to have all these dates. So I started to approach the guy that was running the pizzeria under my house, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I come here with my band, you know, to play a show?" And he said, "Oh, well, no, I don't want it." And I said, "Well, you know, it's a pity because the other pizzeria say yes," and it was not true. But then the guy was like, "Oh no, wow, you're doing it there, so maybe I can do it here." And it went so far that the last venue that I managed to approach was a laundry machine, you know, like a laundrette, basically, like. And I really don't know why the guy said yes in the end. You can see the video afterwards upstairs. You have to imagine, you know, like this laundry machine, which is this place, which is like half of the room where you're sitting, and basically 300 people trying to attend this show, like jumping from the laundry machine and everybody screaming and dancing. But the important thing to me about this project was the fact that beyond my beliefs, it became a trigger in a way for the whole community. What I would have expected is that yes, the project would grow up day after day, because there was curiosity, of course, to see what a band can do in a place like a little bar, a cafe, a laundry machine place, like weird places. But the music was so awful, in a way that I just thought maybe it was something interesting for the young people. And but there were people from every sort of generation, every sort of background, coming there, getting together, just for the sake of being together. And that was incredible. And he activated a sort of little economical system within the content of the town. So in the end, it was an experience that went beyond, like just the art project itself, which is something that, in a way or another, I always try to do with my work as an artist. What I'm interested in is when I can manage, with my work to interfere with reality, meaning that the work can be as private and personal as possible, but it has to be challenging for what's going on. And when I first, for example, brought in my own band into the museum, it was because I wanted to be in the wrong place. This meant to me that the people that would come from the art system and would see the performance would look at it and just mostly criticize it for it being like a concert. While the people from the music scene would come in and think, okay, this is like an art performance, and they were looking at the same thing, but each of them was recognizing the language that they did not know, and they didn't want to know, And for me that was important because, as I said, I just didn't want to please anyone. I just really wanted to be in a place that I felt was mine. In order to be in your spot, most of the time you have to be in the wrong place. At least that's the way I feel. And this is connected again to the idea of Codalunga, because Codalunga, it's definitely in the wrong place, but it's the best place. It's the only place where it meant it could have possibly existed to me. And that's basically it. I think I touched a few different points.
Yeah, so I think it's also interesting. It's something that you touched. The music became also kind of maybe not voluntary, but a kind of strategy also to bring people. It's a kind of rooming between art and a community that usually is not interested in art. Music maybe can be a good way to bring people in a place where also artistic things or things made in artistic way are happening.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, absolutely. It's somehow this thing that I just said, like about gathering together a number of people that normally wouldn't be together in the same place, which somehow maybe it's connected also to what you were saying before with the idea of the bar.
Exactly.
So it's one important thing to me about doing things in general is that when you refer to there is this way of saying, that I always remember from the music scene, which was like it's kind of useless to preach to the converted. Which meant, basically, why would you share an opinion with somebody that basically thinks like you? And to me, this connected to the art or the music scene, whatever scene it is, basically there's a moment in which all of a sudden we are talking a language. And I don't think art should be a language, or at least I don't think it should be a language that we all speak in the same way. I think the art speaks for itself, as a sort of its own language. But whenever we try to approach it, we try with our own word to say it and express it. But I think there's always a moment in which when you recognize the way you can build a sentence or something, something is wrong. The grammar with which this language, that is art, it's meant, it's like a language that is impossible to learn. I think it's something that should go on its own, you know. And that's why I'm talking about this idea of mixing codes and like if you and I really could not speak right now, you know, and we were just maybe forced to go upstairs and watch the exhibition and then just, I don't know, try to explain it with, I don't know, little, well, we're doing it like with objects, you know, like why would you create a sculpture, you know, like if you can talk about something. I think I lost myself, but that's nice.
No, but I think it's interesting because this idea of a kind of an anti-linguistic attitude, it's interesting because it connects music with a direct perception of art, and so it's a way it's a kind of to make a statement about being connected with something that is real. And for example, something that we talked a lot about it is that there has been a completely change passing from a situation where the critics held, let's say, the power of the art system to a situation where more curators have the power of the art system. Now there is a question, maybe this is a question that is also interesting, it can be interesting also connected with the guys from the academy, because it will be a problem that they will face it very soon, if not already they face it, is that now in a big amount of moments your artworks won't be perceived through direct perception of that, so people won't come to see directly what you are doing, but you will be pushed to communicate what you are doing through CVs, portfolios, bad quality photos, computer screens. We can say that probably in the 90% of your future career, your artwork, it won't be perceived directly, but through a linguistic reduction or through a documentation of what you did. That it will be completely useless without a kind of linguistic statements, a short linguistic statements, because you have to be seductive in let's say 20-30 minutes, because a curator won't give you much more attention on that, probably. And this will bring many questions, you know. Probably you will have to reduce your work to something that is possible to communicate in a quick way, and it means also superficial way. Also, because otherwise you will never win any application or any residency, and you will for sure want to do that. And the project that we did with Davide, bringing this kind of critical attitude, it was a way also to face this kind of things. Are we sure that we are going to a better situation working in this way? And so it's a way to problematize things. And that's why also for us it was interesting to bring Nico here as an example of a critical position because of the place that he chooses, because of this kind of attitude. Also the small show that we did upstairs has more or less no didascalic things. It will be a bit messy, you will see, purposely messy, and we would like that you enjoy it as we say also as a sensual or an erotic experience with no true language. And I think these things are very important today. It means it's also a political position. It's a way also to reflect on things and also to refuse something and to accept something else. And it means that you can do something political even without speaking about a direct political issue. And I think this is something that is, maybe Italo can tell us a bit more, because in the book that we published there is a text that he wrote as an answer to a small debate that started in Italy, because a few important curators or museum directors in Italy published two texts on flash art, isn't it? Saying that the Italian art scene is not strong abroad because we do not talk too much about political issues. So we are too much, let's say, superficial. And Italo was not, he didn't agree with it, and he wrote an answer, let's say, text. Maybe he can tell us a bit more about it.
I will try. How are you? Everything is a bit, yes. Can you follow? A little bit.
You want to say we are boring?
No, it's just, no, for me it's also a special moment. When you meet somebody you have never met before and you have to try to find a way to meet and exchange with these other people. So that's why I'm asking, because I would like maybe, if it's possible, to exchange with you during this talk and also later if you like. But right now, if you have maybe the desire to say something and you feel that English is not really strong, maybe we can also help with the translation. Maybe Federica can help. Also, I wanted to thank Benoit and the organization which is behind our trip and the support we are receiving here, because for me, at least for me, it was also an opportunity to share some time with some friends that I don't have a chance to meet so often, even if we all more or less live in Italy, because part of our job and work and life is also to travel a lot, to be busy with our work. And something that I have been missing a lot in the past is these moments when you can just sit and drink and talk about your work, about your passions. So we have been referring before to something which happened last night. Can I say something about it?
Yeah.
Because we had, was it last night? We had this beautiful dinner at the
Not the
castle.
night before when we just ran. We had more than 2 drinks.
Yes. So last night, maybe as a preparation to this meeting with you, this talk with you today, maybe also to release some of the tension maybe towards this moment when we have to present ourselves, we started to have a discussion during our dinner, and I think that was also important to have it. It was also a little confrontational. How do we say confrontational in French?
Confrontationnel.
Ecco, okay. And because what I liked is that each of us was trying to make a point and defend a position. And so as an artist also I ask myself sometimes if I had a position, for instance, in the past, because I've been working as an artist for about 20 years now, and I made choices at the beginning that looked very right. They were not so right. Maybe there were choices that didn't work for me, didn't suit me. So I always belonged to the art field, to the art domain, but I always feel also that I don't belong to it, because there are codes and rules, and sometimes I'm not able to find a way to dialogue with this kind of structure. Sometimes I feel it's not totally for me, so each time I have to maybe invent a way to find a solution to be able to relate and bring my work into this structure. So the reason for being into this book, because I think it's about the book and about your project that we are talking today, is that first of all, there's a friendship, there's a relationship which is some years old with Antonio and Davide. And then some years ago, I was reading this. Do you know this magazine, Flash Art? It's also an international edition. And each month, it's a monthly magazine in Italy. And for some years, it was the only art magazine in Italy, in fact. So everybody was really reading flash art, and it was a kind of Bible. And now it has changed. There are many more magazines. There are more voices, also different ones. So now it's different. But in the past, flash art used to be the only important voice. And so there were these articles, 2 articles, which were written 1 month after the other. And these articles were saying something which, for me, it was a little strange. They were saying Italian artists don't produce political art. And sometimes when there is a provocation, you can decide to ignore the provocation, to answer with humor, or you react with some tension. It's my way of reacting sometimes. I react through some tension. So I contacted the redazione? Flash Art, the director, saying, I would like to write an article to react, to respond to these other articles. And they said, okay, you can write something, and then we will see. And they liked my article, my text, and they published it. And basically, these other articles, which were attacking the Italian artists, were saying something like this: questo, figli di papà, chiusi a giocare nel loro studio.
Figli di papà va a sapere.
Spoiled children.
Yeah, spoiled children.
But maybe in French, can we have just this sentence? No?
Enfant gâté. Enfermé à jouer dans leur atelier.
Yes. And for me, what was strange is that to say this, it was not somebody from outside of Italy, but somebody who was working inside of Italy. So they were kind of doing something against us. Because I don't know if I say too much or if I'm too long, you can always say. But maybe I don't know how much you know about Italian art, contemporary art in Italy. But for us, it has always been difficult to work as artists in Italy because there are places, there are countries where, if you want to develop your practice, for instance, you can receive some support, also public support, yes? In Italy, this is totally different. You have to find a way to survive, basically. And the only possible way, especially at the beginning, for a young artist is to, maybe through the gallery, to sell the work. And by selling the work, you produce some economy that you reinvest in your work, in your production. And this is very difficult to establish as a practice. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it takes many years. Because it's not possible to develop your practice as an artist in 1 year, or in 2 years, or in 5 years. We know that to be creative, it can also be a process that can take a very long time. And during that time, you have you have moments when it's difficult to keep working at the same time to have an economy. So what I want to say is that, and it was my point in my article, is that to be an artist in Italy in itself is already a political act, because if you are an artist after so many years, especially in Italy, then you have already struggled against something to keep producing, to keep making your work. So I tried to react, and what was interesting for me is that my text was not relaxed. My text was a little nervous, a little tense. But it was important to say something because I think it was becoming a little dangerous what they were saying. So I decided to oppose my point to that.
It is also interesting to me that some curator would write something that the way Italian artists make art is not political. While, for example, I think that one of the main problems in Italy is that culture is way too much connected to political. What I mean to say, to politics. What I mean to say is just that most of the time the museum directors, for example, get chosen for political reason. I believe that can be said very quite clear. And this happened even in recent time with the people that were in charge of curating, for example, the Italian pavilion at the Venice Biennial. And I think that's kind of interesting because, for example, there was this one artist that sort of made a deal about having said no to the pavilion because the curator was somehow related to Berlusconi government. And in my opinion, that's complete bullshit. The reason why I think it's bullshit is just, first of all, we all knew the exhibition was just going to be crappy. So each of us that was contacted would say no just for that, you know. But also, like, would it be better if the curator was chosen from a left wing, for example, oriented government? My answer is no, it has nothing to do with that. The thing is that art should not be linked to politics in such way. I know what they were trying to criticize was not this behavior, but was not what I'm talking about right now. But the thing is that it seems like what they were approaching with this text was just one single possible way to do art in a political way. Why, for example, I think my work never dealt with politics in a direct way, but it is very political. And as Italo, I think, said, like, to be an artist in Italy is already a sort of political statement because the way you have to struggle, the way you have to live, it's already kind of challenging. And for me, it has always been a call for independency and or somehow a call for what I thought, or I hoped, wished was freedom in a way. Should we drink? No.
It's really interesting to talk about Italy and about the relation between politics and artists and Italian art system and artists. Because one of the things that we try to say in this book, and that there is an energy that is a bit different from the idea that you can have of Italy by abroad, you know, a different energy.
True.
And then, for example, this morning I was buying cigarettes in a supermarket, so it could be interesting to discuss with you about how you see Italy from Italian contemporary art or art system from abroad. I was buying cigarettes and the lady in the supermarket was speaking in Italian, and she told me, "Do you understand Italian? Cosa stai facendo qui? What are you doing here?" And I told her, "I'm going to have a lecture this afternoon in an art space about the Italian art system." And she answered me, "Oh, in Italia tutto sta crollando. Pompei, crolla tutto in Italia."
Everything is falling down.
Yeah, everything is falling down.
It's crumbling.
So it could be really interesting to open the discussion to you also about Italy from abroad. But I just would like, if I can, to ask to Federica, because you were telling me about this meeting you had in Lausanne, yeah, with some art critics from who works in this country, I think, and you had a discussion, and so I'm very curious to know how close the discussion you have is from the thing that we are saying about Italy. I mean, how was the discussion in this during this meeting?
So Raphael was also there, so in case he can correct me.
Okay.
And I think we're very attached. I'm actually First of all, by the way, very happy to discuss with you because I remember my conversation in bars, like these no schedule situations, and we had a certain number of dinners that we organized in an artist art space in Lausanne, where the idea was to have no schedule, but just some people who came up around some cliché questions that you would hear during vernissage and nobody would really discuss. Now, why is art critics dead? And why is the rock scene dead in Lausanne? Or, yeah, it was a lot about that actually. So we brought up a few questions, and astonishingly, we were expecting now 10 people, our friends, and then like 60 people turned up, and all the French-speaking journalists dealing with art critics in Lausanne. And so it started like some sort of a joke, but then it became a very heated debate. We had a lot of artists also among us. There is a strange sensation here that I also find in Italy actually, this idea that art critics is not doing its job anymore, like somehow provoking thought or also trying to take a position, no? As Italo was saying before, so trying also to react and engage a dialogue with articles that are published. And at the same time, one sensation that was shared by most of the speakers was the idea that we're also trying to defend something very fragile. So somehow the job of the art critic, especially like in Switzerland, there are small linguistic regions, so you don't have a huge audience, and the newspapers are losing a lot of space, really pages for culture. So when you talk about
but there is a space in newspapers for art, or for art.
There is in most newspapers, but it's really shrinking. Okay. So when you get some space, you don't say bad things about contemporary art, but you tend to talk about things that you really appreciated, also as a way of support. And I think this is also somehow creating a strange situation where you're not really talking negative things anymore, or trying to go more in depth. You really more try to create an art critique which is an art mediation in a certain sense. And the other thing that emerged is that today we have a lot of text. So you get to the exhibition, this linguistic reduction start with a press release, then you get wall text. Now often you also have an exhibition guide or journal, plus a catalog or a reader, so something going on. So by the time you get to the work, the critic's article is not that important anymore. Or it is, but in a completely different way. So maybe there is something also to think about what format of critics could work today in this scene. What kind of...
It's a question.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were still following. That's something, I don't know if you want to answer, that's something really interesting. And for example, we made, with Davide, we made some kind of, not experiment, but yeah, we experimented a bit with the format of making a text today. And for example, before every, not before every, but before 3 appointments that we had at Mambo, we made together with Davide 3 dialogues, quite long, that are also in the book, and that we published in a very easy way with an inkjet print before our appointments. And we built this dialogue through months, so we took a lot of time. And we built this dialogue sending each other emails about the topics that we were going to talk during our discussion. So our preparation of the discussion, it was made through these dialogues. And every email is really, but some of them are really short, but a large part of that are really long text that we wrote in a style that it's interesting for us because it's something in between a critical or philosophical critical, let's say, text that you can have in a more academical situation. But it's not as well something really low like the discussion that you can have in an informal situation. It's something in between, and this kind of in betweenness we really loved. And we used it a lot, and for us it became really important. And for example, I started to work a lot with this kind of dialogue. At the same time, for example, into this book, there are, I think, 1 or 2 interviews, just few ones, or maybe just 1.
I think 2, I don't remember.
Anyway, we talked a lot against interview today. Because in the 60s, interviews into the art critics became really interesting, because it was a way for the critics to give back a bit of power to the artist, that till that point they wrote, but not in the way that they are writing today. Or it was a way for the artist to take back the voice, to speak about themselves. With the passing of the decades, we think that interview became, for us as curator, a way to avoid the responsibility to give a judgment about what they are talking, and a way to do not talk about real artworks, because as we said before, curators don't look artworks so much as people would think. They're always looking at screen or at paper, statement or paper or portfolio on that. So we kind of refuse that kind of language today, and we decided to make different kind of text. At the same time, we somehow fought, or we refused another style of critic today, that is the use of fiction into the art critic today. If you buy Frieze or many other fancy magazines today, there are a lot of fictional text written by critics or also from writers that more often are invited to talk into the art system, or poetical things or things like this. Even in that case, we thought that maybe even that one, it was a curatorial strategy to avoid judgment, to avoid the responsibility to talk about real things. So to make a big circle around the things without getting to the point. And even in that case, it was a way to avoid the responsibility. So for us, every single moment of this project, even the text that we choose or the text that we made together, it was a way to bring everything back to some kind of judgment or to some kind of reality that we have to talk about it. So I don't know if it can be an answer to what you asked. You know, for us, it's interesting what you said about your dinner, because even for us, the work on the bar started like not like a joke, but almost a joke, and we had such a good feedbacks. So many people came, and they were all really interested in this kind of direct talk about real things and about important question and point of friction. That we understood that it was important, and that's why we proposed to the Mambo to make a whole project about criticism. And I wanted to say one more thing, but I forgot it. Maybe it will come back to me
So
later on.
maybe the book is a better format for criticism today than a magazine. Because you're talking here also about a lot of time, and we live in a situation of information overload. So what does make the difference? You also mentioned it as one of your key questions. Why don't we read each other?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's true. A book, if you talk about, there is a kind of ghost behind this project. There's the relationship. I think, in my opinion, maybe more in my opinion than in the opinion of Davide, is the relationship, love-fight relationship between curators and art critics. And they're like two poles. If you wanted to make it as an abstract idea, you can see it as two different polarity, of aggregation. And they are completely different if you see it in an abstract way, as a two opposite way to work in time and in space. So let's say the curator today has to travel the world continuously, meeting as much artists as possible. As I said before, the big percentage of this time in the most indirect way, giving just a few minutes to all the artists in the world, let's say, to get as soon as possible to the new hot topic, the hot name, let's say, and if you see also about the curatorial practice, names are always changing. If you see the career of a curator in 10 years, every year the name are changing. So everything, it has to be consumed in a very super quick way, and this is also something connected with magazine. You know, it's something quick, and it's something that it became also a tool for powerful things. So for people, our colleague, and also, you know, we are part of that, so we are also responsible for that. Are using magazines as a curatorial tool. An art critic is about judgment, and judgment, it means that you say, I think something is good now, and it will be good even in 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. And the book is more connected with a longer time, you know. So and it's also a way to take much more responsibility on what you are saying, you know. If you say, I think I need the money to publish that, it means that you really believe on it. You know, curators is most connected with the context, with the time context and with the space context. I make a temporary exhibition that it's important here and now, and maybe in 1 year it will be outdated. You know, art criticism is about, as I said, long judgment, and that's why also art critics were connected more with the moment where museum and that permanent collection were important. You know, when museums started to make only, let's say on brackets, temporary shows, you know, curators grew up.
You know, the other thing is that you know, magazine or writings in magazine are fragmentary. You know, in 1 month you have so many things to read, and it's difficult to find the touch, the traces of a critical debate, even if you read all the magazines, because it's very, very hard. And a book like this gave us the opportunity to find some connection between things that appeared in different moments in magazines. So, how can I say, time after time, I mean, every 10 years, it's good to have...
also to save something,
yeah.
You know? Magazines after a few months are lost, you know, you will never find any, and it's also in this case, it's a way to take the responsibility to say, this is a good article and this is not a good article. It was also a way to build some kind of macro narration of what happened in Italy through the work of our colleagues, you know?
Yeah.
Not a follow.
No, I was curious also to get your opinion on that. What if, for example, art criticism were just a function that can be taken over by artists and curators indifferently? Would you be interested in that, or what kind of
What do you mean?
Yeah, because we are talking also about the relationship between curators and art critics here. So this ambiguity, which is also sometimes an economical conflict, because maybe curators are writing criticism about galleries they work for. So sometimes there is also an ethical issue in that. But at the same time, it's true that we get very different kinds of criticism or art critics today. I wanted to know what's your position if you miss this kind of stronger art critics, like from the Italian tradition, or if you are more at ease with other forms.
Well, I don't know, because I come from a generation somehow that never really had the chance to, I mean, this generation of critics that you're talking about never dealt somehow with my generation in a way. But surely I think personally I would love to see more strong debates, you know, and collisions of ideas, and because I think that only from that you can probably generate new. When, for example, Italo was saying, like, you know, like my reaction was nervous in a way. I believe that it is from tension somehow that you manage to create better and challenging ideas, and not in the conformity or in the quietness or something. But on the other hand, you know, I'm intrigued by this moment, you know, like, but as an artist, I strongly believe in roles, you know, like, and that might be strange, said, it might appear strange to be said by somebody like me, who for some wrong reason was always, I was always considered somebody that liked to mix things, but I don't, you know, like, it's not that I mix, I just put them next to each other somehow, and see how they react, you know, like in a sort of, I don't know, it's not I don't want to create comparison here now, but I believe in roles, you know, and I believe that the role of the artist is just focus on his own work. And I think that it's, or at least the way I approach things is not a very, I don't spend too much time, you know, reflecting on the situation where I live. I'm just too concerned with living it, you know, rather than analyzing it. You know, I like the way I approach art is like, I don't know, it's somehow like fishing in mud rather than in clear water, you know, like I don't want to know what I'm catching. I'm just happy if I manage to catch something. Like, to me, it's never, the goal is never with, for me, like to communicate a precise idea, but rather communicate in itself. If I manage to reach something, then it's the goal, you know, but I never approach a project with the idea of, now what I want to say is this, you know. I like just the idea that I managed to arrive to something. And I don't think I really answered completely your question, but what I'm saying is just that I think, yeah, I believe in roles, you know. I believe there is the art curator, I believe there is the critic, and I like when these things are very clear, you know. And I don't like so much this jumping from one role to the other, and even though I have to say, you know, that some of the most interesting exhibitions I've seen sometimes were curated by artists, you know, like I love, for example, to see artist collections, for example, you know, again, you know, it's not about mixing collector with artist, but I mean, it's nice to see different perspective into things, and definitely it's always very, very nice to, very interesting rather than nice to discuss with other artists about exhibitions, you know, like to debate, it's a pleasure, you know, to have other artists, for example, that you can feel, you can share your vision and perspective with, you know, like, and just say, hey, what do you think about this? And I don't know if that can be considered criticism or, but I don't know.